day. At first, the transformation from etheric to physical form was difficult, but ceremonies evolved, which, using the fragrances of fruits and flowers brought devotionally to special pedestals, assisted in bringing through beings who absorbed these organic essences to materialize a denser, earthly, fibrous body. These beings loved the many jewels and golden ornaments that were crafted to bedeck and help support their flexible forms. Human life did not evolve from lesser earthly species. Om. Attainment of life's ultimate goal had lapsed, the scrolls tell us, among quiescent souls inhabiting far-off planets in a time remote from our own, 4 million years ago. Understanding that stress and pain, love, and earring are necessary uh, to endow the soul with sufficient strength to attain realization of the self. God, Parashiva, essence of all, souls set forth on humanity's greatest known journey. Pilgrimage to Planet Earth, Chapter 1. Mankind migrated to this planet in his divine soul body during this Satyuga, the age of enlightenment. He had reached a final stage of evolution on this native planet. The risk in migrating to a fire planet was great, but so was the reward. They were, however, at a place in evolution requiring a planet with fire in it to catalyze them through new experiences into completing their unfoldment to the final realization of the self. Souls came from the other planets to Earth for one or two reasons. Either they came to realize the self because they had not previously done so and were just drifting in bliss, or were great beings who already had the self realized and came to help the others. They came from everything in a state of status quo. They had come to this planet to get jostled around in the fire to continue their unfoldment. When a planet becomes old, it cools. Everything becomes static in it and on it. The beings inhabiting it exist together like a flock of birds or school of fish. So peaceful they are. Souls who need fire to realize the self could not do so on such an old planet, so the leaders pilgrimaged with their followers to perform the austerity of evolution on a fire planet such as Earth, a hot planet, a young planet. There will be other planets ready to be colonized at the end of the Kali Yuga. Inhabitants of Earth will be able to rapidly access them by traveling as a ray of their own inner light. The lush conditions of the Sat Yuga. In the Satyuga the air was thick and the earth lush and tropical. The thick clouds of gases and healthful substances floating in the air were the materials the divine souls that came to the fire planet, as they referred to it, would use to materialize a physical body around the etheric body of the soul, to express through while living on earth. As more and more came to earth in their etheric bodies, ceremonies were performed in a scientific way by those who had already arrived, offering food and flowers, cut fruits, and other ambrosia before them, so that they could absorb some of the organic essences into the etheric body and materialize around and through it earth bodies. Their etheric bodies became dense, firm, and more defined during these food offering ceremonies, in what were to later become the temples of the Trita Yuga. They continued to absorb these food offering essences until they began to smell and feel and acquired a full physical form and could eat normally as the animals did on earth at that time. The arrival of various races. The most highly evolved souls who arrived first on earth during the Sat Yuga continued to bring more divine beings through into physical form from the other planets. It was part of their mission to do this. Lord Skanda came to earth in the Sat Yuga. He was one of the most highly advanced souls. He came as the leader of the first group, and will guide them all along through into the next Sat Yuga. He was the celestial king of Lemuria. It was because of this most ancient practice of offering the essences of fruit and perfumed ambrosias to the soul's etheric body to absorb and thus create a denser body that this planet became inhabited in the Sat Yuga. As this planet moved through time and space, different races came from the various planets and settled on one area of it or another. During one phase of planetary configurations, ceremonies would be active in one temple to bring through into dense manifest form a group from a certain planet, and as the planets moved into another configuration, the place on Earth polarizing the rays and race of that planet would become inactive, and another race from another planet would come through at a different location through ceremony. The first temples are established. In order to bring these divine souls through into physical form during the Sat Yuga, great temples to each of these planets began to form in which these priestly scientists would make food offerings and bathe a pedestal-like form as a point of concentration. The celestial beings would stand on the pedestal and absorb the earth's pungent substances, and with it materialize strong physical bodies. In the beginning it took a long time to bring the etheric body of a soul into physical form, so he could walk off this pedestal on his own in the earth's atmosphere. But through the thousands of years that passed, it became a very rapid process, and the entire earth became populated with celestial beings from several of the major planets in the galaxy. Thus the souls arrived in full force to begin a long, tedious evolutionary pattern through the 3 yugas to follow. Our first earth bodies. These divine souls who came to populate the planet in the Sat Yuga looked much like mankind will still look hundreds of thousands of years from now in the Kali Yuga, except there was no gender, no male and female, or such a thing as death or reproduction or even sleep. There was no concept of hunger or pain. They could fly easily and freely in their new earth body in the Sat Yuga by mentally lifting up into the air by using the power within their spine and travel somewhere. These bodies were impervious to cold or heat. The air was so thick and healthy they would become nourished simply by breathing in deeply. They didn't really need to eat then, as the air completely filled their bodies with pranic essence each time they took a deep breath. Early in the Sat Yuga they had only but to smell the essence of cut fruits and flowers for a complete meal. Everything was so pungent, and because of the nature of their physical bodies this was possible. But toward the end of the Yuga they had to eat to become nourished, and could not fly as far. The closest they ever came to the concept of death was when the physical elements just dissolved under the power of realizing the self, and the essence of their individuality returned to the planet from whence they came, fully matured, having completed their mission on the fire planet. There was a distinct sense of personality in each of these first transcendental beings that came to our planet during the Sat Yuga, for even the individual soul has an evolution, one different from another. Cosmic cycles of 4 yugas. It is necessary to understand the nature of the yugas to acquire full knowledge of the continuity of mankind as he evolves in experience from his beautiful state in the Sat Yuga to the veiling darkness of the Kali Yuga and into the dawn of the Sat Yuga, the golden age that will again follow. During this entire process, the evolution of each soul will individualize itself as it emerges towards its essence. The Sat Yuga, the Treta Yuga, the Dvapara Yuga, and the Kali Yuga are the names of these 4 divisions of planetary radiation, and they repeat themselves in that order, with the Sat Yuga being the first and the Kali Yuga the last. To understand clearly how they work, observe the 4 major divisions of the day. The darkest part of the night is the great dream of the Kali Yuga. The cycles of Earth around the Sun, therefore, are similar to the cycles of this galaxy around a central sun, which are called the Yugas, because of the radiant cosmic rays that are either released or hidden. The Yugas are the way in which the Mahadevas calculate time and space, when more souls will arrive. This generation of souls started to arrive and live on Earth since the beginning of the Sat Yuga, and more will come through the Treta Yuga. Then no more souls will come until the end of the Kali Yuga. When the next Sat Yuga arrives, those who have lived through the cycle of Yugas will all finish their evolutionary processes and leave. More divine souls will come during that time as the cycle repeats. Life on this and other planets. The fire planet is very young, having become habitable only a few cycles of yugas ago. There are planets in this universe much older than the fire planet. The inhabitants of these older and larger planets do not live on the surface of their planet. They use the surface only like a park and to provide their nourishment, and live in underground places that many have been constructed millions of years ago. It is necessary to live for several of these yugas on Earth in order to earn admittance to other planets. Duration of the yugas. The yugas are calculated by a span of vibration. Our Lemurian calculations of time will not be translatable into calendars of the Kali Yuga, so at that time there will be confusion about the length of each time a yuga is supposed to contain, but it is discernible when another yuga is imminent by the changes that occur within the population. Dawn of the glorious Sat Yuga. The Sat Yuga is always the time of dawn, of birth, of awakening into the fullness of the soul. It is a time of total light, with no confusion of the forces as later begins to exist at the wane of the Treta Yuga, and through the Dvapara Yuga and Kali Yuga. Everything existed in its fullness in the Sat Yuga, with a total and open giving of all the world's goods, physically, superconsciously, and intellectually between beings. There was no feeling at all of personal ego. In the Kali Yuga, there will exist feelings of possessiveness or difference, one from another, resulting from the change in the great mind flow of the yugas as the souls become caught in the animal and human evolution as a result of the shift toward darker states of consciousness. They will suffer the constant acquiring of yet a more dense body from birth to birth in the darkness of the Dvapara and Kali Yugas, until the Sat Yuga dawns again in light and glory. As the galaxy rotates into the second relationship with the cosmic sun, the space and mind flows persisting, and through the earth are those of the Treta Yuga. Much of the refinement and superconsciousness of the Sat Yuga will still permeate through the Treta Yuga, but later it will wane when the dusk of externalization of consciousness permeates as the galaxy slowly shifts again, cutting off some of the rays of the central sun. Man takes on animal bodies. Now, during the end of the Treta Yuga, souls can no longer migrate to our planet the way they did through the Sat Yuga. Many of these divine earthly bodies, constructed from fruit ambrosia, herbal essences, and the pungent air, could no longer fly and have been eaten by the carnivorous beings of the animal kingdom, the inhabitants remaining from the last Kali Yuga. As a result of having been devoured by animals, these souls got caught within the evolutionary cycle of the particular species that had eaten their original body. Then, through the cycle of birth and death, they emerged again, but were captured in the instinctive nerve system of animal bodies. Then, through the long process of mutation and reincarnation, they finally, after great struggles and help from the Mahadevas, cultivated a body similar to the first earth body devoured long ago. This human body had animal instincts and was difficult to live in. This mutation began new breeds of animals that were not carnivorous, being still in original bodies, but now not able to fly much anymore, could ride these animals, fly upon, and feed from the milk within some of them. For these new breeds of animals encased some of the celestial beings yet to acquire a human body. Life during the Treta Yuga. The Treta Yuga is a wonderful period in which intense cosmic rays still penetrate the earth. This makes such evolution possible as creating a flesh body that appears to be like the original one for those celestial beings caught in animal reincarnation cycles to inhabit. These flesh and bone bodies will last through the Dvapara and Kali Yugas until the strong vibration of the next Sat Yuga comes to cause their liberation and permit many of us to leave this planet. These final humiliations and struggles within the instinctive area of externalized mind through the darker yugas will give the final polish sanctifying our divinity. It has been observed now that we are approaching the end of the Treta Yuga, that a sense of fear is being experienced for the first time as a result of eating wrong kinds of foods, along with losing some of the personal abilities to fly. Engineering the process of reincarnation. Our laboratories cultivate species of animals in order to breed bodies similar to the original body, and when a soul had become caught in the animal kingdom, experiments were conducted in these laboratories near the temple of the planet whence the soul had originally come, to release him from this bondage into the birth of a body he could be more comfortable in. Many celestial souls would be quickly released from the animal reincarnation cycles in this way. Ceremonies to effect human birth. It has been predicted that similar ceremonies will be performed through the Kali Yuga, but will not bring souls through into physical form, as they did in the Sat Yuga, nor will they accomplish the release of souls as in the Treta Yuga. They will just bring a soul close enough to the physical world to establish contact with future parents to effect birth. This process will begin refining many races and varieties of people on the planet in preparation for the next Sat Yuga. The few left who have original bodies will live in caves high in the mountains during the end of the Treta Yuga to avoid being caught in the fleshy, hot body of the animal and to preserve the original bodies as long as possible. Here new metals will be found to work with, and large communities will grow as a result through the use of them, our prophets tell us. Cycles of bondage in animal bodies. The cycle of getting out of the animal kingdom takes a long, long time unless help is given, and even to the end of the Kali Yuga and into the next Sat Yuga, souls will be seen still trying to escape from the fiery bondage of animal bodies. It will be during the Kali Yuga that a human kingdom will eventually fully come out of the different species of animals and form different groups on earth, some of whom will be the predators of the others, we are told. Discomfort and yearning for release. The original bodies some of us still have are neither male nor female, nor do they sleep or experience heat, cold, or fear. Therefore the souls in flesh bodies feel uncomfortable experiencing these instincts and demands of their bodies and yearn for release. They will be found still striving through the Kali Yuga to adjust these forces. This is the evolution we had come here to experience. Yugas before. Mankind arrived on Earth. Celestial beings in wingless spacecraft spread seeds from other planets. Souls arriving in the last Sat Yuga eventually formed monasteries in which experiments were conducted into the nature of life, designing forms it should take on this planet. Their flexible bodies were light and easily flew in the dense air. Occasionally one would be devoured by an animal, thus capturing the soul in the incarnation cycle of that species. Through the long mutative process of repeatedly re-entering these instinctive bodies, they finally cultivated a body similar to, yet cruder than, the first fibrous bodies. To release a soul caught in an animal reincarnation cycle into human birth, ceremonial sacrifice was conducted with the knowledge and silent consent of the animal. Om. Because each yuga is an advent in time and space, as these Shastras explain, each differs in tone and tenor. We shall now watch what will one day be known as humankind makes the Treta Yuga transition downward into the instinctive nature in order to grow, develop, and then unfold the spiritual being. Thus the wheel of samsara spins in greater velocity in never-failing purposefulness on earth. Guru Deva. The Cycle of Yugas, Chapter 2. Only with the advent of the animal kingdom was there such a thing as tapas or sadhana to transmute the fires of instinctive desire. There will come a time toward the end of the Dvapara Yuga and into the Kali Yuga when the soul will incarnate into a human body and be pulled back into the animal world, and then again into a human body and be pulled back into the animal world, and then again into a human body, simulating a war between devas and demons. There will be families who live deep in caves in the first evolutionary step out of the animal kingdom, who weren't reclaimed by the sacrificial ceremonies of the Treta Yuga, the sublime era called the Treta Yuga. During the Treta Yuga, the earth has been lush and wonderful for those souls who avoided the animal world and continued to fulfill their evolution on earth without interruption in their original bodies. All through this time we greatly perfected laboratory-like monasteries, working to help those who were captured. We all lived together in absolute blissful harmony, and the world was a beautiful place. Everyone was creative and well occupied with various mental activities rather than those of a physical nature. All was ever in a state of total completion at each point in time, due to the nature of the yuga and our culture. Even when the original body was lost to a hungry animal, this did not disturb the inner equanimity. It will be only in the end of the Dvapara Yuga and into the Kali Yuga that this completeness of culture and natural expression of soul will be lost, and the division between the inner and outer will become a great barrier, it is predicted. As others entered the animal kingdom, it was considered a natural participation in the evolution on this planet, though we all avoided the experience as long as possible. It was only those who came back from the animal herds through mutation into the newly forming human race with bodies that mated, who knew a little of the duality of happiness and unhappiness, the ratio of those still in original bodies. As the Sat Yuga ended with the advent of the Treta Yuga, the ratio of divine beings to those entering the animal kingdom was something like 3 to 1. 1/2 to 1/2 was the ratio during the Treta Yuga, but now towards its end the ratio is 1 in the original body to 3 in the others. Our prophecies read out that during the Dvapara and Kali Yugas, every celestial soul will either be in an animal body or in a human body made of its flesh, fire, and bones, and it will be at the end of the Dvapara Yuga that all will see and remember the virtues of the Treta Yuga, and tell in great volumes its history and culture as it faces the looming gloom of the Kali Yuga. Soon man forgets those virtues and the proper way of moving in the mind and using its powers as he begins to work for dark purposes. It is during this time he will have mental battles with one another, and the black arts will be played with as games. It will be in the Kali Yuga that mankind kills one another, but in the Dvapara Yuga still there is not yet the killing, no hand-to-hand combat as in the Kali Yuga, but one will hurt the mind of another in the dusk of his soul. It will be in the Kali Yuga, after the souls emerge in human form with desires, passions, and reproductive fervor, that racial and religious groups of many different kinds will begin. Before that, there is only one religion. Exercising the fading ability to fly. Our power of being able to fly is beginning to wane, and it is impossible to travel for long distances, and so we fly in games and for sport as we exercise this fast-fading faculty. Many are seen walking, then flying a little and walking again, interspersing one with another 300 or 400 yards at a time. Those in the grosser bodies cannot do this at all, and marvel at our ability. Children, however, can sometimes fly in the human bodies, and they lift them in the air and spin around as they dance and play one with another. They could fly long distances, but didn't really have the desire to go any place because their homes were so nice there was no need to travel anywhere. The sign of our losing our ability to fly, it has been predicted, is the official beginning of the Dvapara Yuga's advent in space and time. Then vast substances will form and divide the land. Darkness will prevail and cloud the mind, they say. Prediction about the Dvapara Yuga. In the end of the Dvapara Yuga, it is seen the destruction of everything that had been built in the Treta Yuga in the dark area of the world. The races of light and the races of darkness become divided by water. The air becomes thinner. During this time there is inner darkness within man in one part of the world, and inner light in another part, creating a balance of sorts. Monasteries form to hold the forces of light and keep the balance of the race, whereas the races in darkness will not have any monasteries and just do agriculture and care for the body. Everyone will try to influence everyone else through the powers of his mind. People try to convert other people to their religion and philosophy. No one is left on his own. Thought becomes very important to everyone. Everyone tries to program everyone else's thoughts. The destruction of this civilization will begin the Kali Yuga. The loss of knowledge and the loss of the ability to evolve divine faculties in the human body will occur, they say. Great knowledge, however, will be forced through certain souls by the Mahadevas, who will speak it and write it through the Kali Yuga to stabilize the belief and the culture, the prophecy states. During the Dvapara Yuga, many of you will be coming back into human form from the animal kingdom and feeling the power of reason and memory, our teacher tells us. Then man will separate himself from others to endeavor to seek control over the forces within him, with the object to arrive within himself at the state he used to be in, out of the wheel of animalistic reincarnation through procreation. Releasing souls from animal incarnation. One of the major functions of some of the temples during this time of the end of the Treta Yuga is to cause the release of the souls from the animal kingdom through sacrifice. Often the soul would be released from an animal body and be able to incarnate into a human family attending the ceremony. But later on in the Dvapara Yuga, people will indeed consider themselves fortunate to receive a blessing from a Mahadeva, we predict, because there will be too many in flesh and bone bodies at that point in time and space, and these kinds of sacrificial ceremonies will not be effective because the vibration of the earth will not be conducive for this kind of transmigration of the soul to occur. At this time, many will begin to eat meat and fish as some animals do, and take on their characteristics of desire and cunning, and live in the instinctive animal consciousness. Then when the Satyuga dawns, these celestial souls who had been trapped in the instinctive nerve system, slowly working their way out of the animal kingdom, as well as out of human bodies, will find liberation. Their human bodies, then, will still look similar to the few original bodies we have left among us now, but they will still have the heat and fire of the animal nerve system. In the Kali Yuga, humanity will follow routine blindly and their prophets completely. This will not be difficult because the prophets will not be able to see well, hence not too far. The central sun's rays in the Sat Yuga. Cosmic rays from the central sun will become stronger and stronger, heralding the dawn of the next Sat Yuga. There will be a new vibration, and everything will change. Mankind will again understand himself, and virtue will dawn as the Sat Yuga quickly unfolds its strength. Many who are not ready for the light of this Yuga will perish. Those who are of the Sat Yuga will experience the beauty of its dawn, unaffected by the astrological and earth changes which will claim the lives of the unenlightened bound by the fierce dragon of lust. There will be more atmospheric changes like heat and cold, gases and chemicals, and things of this nature will bring on the Yuga. As the Yuga progresses, people will know the nature of the planet and work with it rather than trying to control it, realizing what the planet needs and letting it go through what it needs to go through. This knowledge comes from the inside of man. This will be a time when people will change from the inside out. People won't think the way they used to. Everything will respond to the new inner and outer space vibration. Cosmic rays getting stronger and stronger, bringing the Sat Yuga. This has to do with what's in space. As the Yuga dawns, everything on Earth will become clean on a mass scale through the media of a mass method of communication. When people again come from our other planets in the way they did in the Sat Yuga, the change will be complete, and the dawn of the Sat Yuga will have fully arrived. It will be a gradual change to a great intensity. It will seem as if time is speeding up in the beginning, and concepts of space will change. It will be slightly different, though, at that time, as the planet will be older and cooler. As time goes on into the Sat Yuga, there will be less and less earth changes because the planet will be cooler. Everything will set. Cycles of time, mind, and space. The central sun is an unseen sun, just the opposite of our sun, as if it weren't, but everything revolves around it, and the rays are felt like the rays of the self are felt, but not seen. It is that brink of the absolute consciousness. The yugas occur as a result of the revolution around the central sun, which is likened to an intense hole in space. There have been several series of yugas before this one where similar occurrences repeated themselves. The yugas are time cycles of time, mind, and space. Time travels in a cycle in the inner mind, not a straight line. Space is a circle, too. Space, stars, planets, moons, and time and mind all revolve around a central sun, our Shastras stress. There are planets similar to the Earth, but older than the Earth, that are way forward in yugas yet to come. This planet is not yet that far into them, but there are great souls on the Earth who have been in other yugas or other Earths and are now back again to guide. 4 cycles of yugas on Earth. Each yuga is a cycle of time and a cycle of space. The end of the coming Kali Yuga will be the end of the 3rd full cycle of yugas since this planet became habitable. The next Sat Yuga will begin the 4th cycle of yugas. During the 2nd cycle of yugas, celestial beings arrived from other planets bringing with them vegetation. Their spaceships passing over the Earth's surface dropped seeds and foliage. Then celestial beings came en masse and hovered over the Earth in their etheric bodies. Some became the birds and small and large animals because they couldn't bring through the duplication of the divine soul body strongly enough to live on Earth at that time. Due to the conditions of the Earth and the gases in the atmosphere, a mutation took place among all the divine souls that started the instinctive mind on the planet. The animals at the end of the 2nd cycle were big, beautiful, and happy. Even during this yuga, the small animals from the 2nd cycle of yugas are coming into human form. There will be many humans on Earth as it enters the 4th cycle of yugas, our Shastras have explained to us. Devonic races within birds and mammals. Some birds are a race of devas that will never incarnate into anything other than birds. All egg-laying creatures are devas and stay in the inner world of this planet. This would include turtles, snakes, fish, lizards, and birds. The large mammals of the water, however, that give birth will eventually take human birth. Most all of Lemuria will be under vast bodies of liquid during the Kali Yuga, protected by various kinds of these mammals swimming within it, they say. Adjusting to the vibration of each yuga. At the beginning of each yuga, the celestial soul within each body will not immediately realize how to adjust itself to the external mind flow, but as the yuga progresses, the brain and intellect will adapt easily within the new forces that come into effect. The middle of the last Sat Yuga and the middle of the next, our seers tell us, exist simultaneously in one current point in time. The beginning of the next Sat Yuga will be similar to the end of the Treta Yuga. During this time there will be similarities between the 2 yugas, such as mankind's ability to understand the true nature of himself, harmony between people, flying for short distances, and the ancient orders of monasticism again flourishing on Earth. During the next Sat Yuga, knowledge of working with and through the rays of the central sun will return. Then man will live underground again as he did before he came to this planet, and then remember how to travel easily through space. He will never travel easily in space until he lives under the surface of the Earth, our prophets clearly state. Placing books in the Akasha. We have a little Shastric book, small in size and quite thick, which describes the methods used in placing the manuscripts of all cultures in time during the latter part of this yuga into the atmosphere of the inner mind. It says that all manifest life comes from the forces within inner substance of the mind and permeates out through all the other elements. All these elements exist within a seed. A seed is in direct connection to the Akasha. Therefore, the oil from a seed is a direct tube into it from the physical plane. To place books in the Akasha, they should be first soaked in oil and then burned, it states. It is through the method of soaking books in life-giving oils, then reading them aloud to imprint them in the memory Akasha and burning them to put them into the astral akasha, that all records of history, philosophy, and prophecy are written. The books that are in the akasha were made out of the oil in this way, the exact same substance as earth oil, but the inner part of the oils appear in any kind of manifest form in the akasha through this method. Oil is a form of odic force in a very condensed state. Anything crushed will turn to oil eventually, they say. Within the oil is fire and many other kinds of elements. Everyone who used the single eye had access to any or all of these books. Later in the Kali Yuga, when this is not possible, books will be written, and many copies of the same one will be made to be read by those who have the use of both or one or the other of the two eyes. Original bodies, first flesh bodies. Our original earth bodies were boned very soft in the Sat Yuga. The bones at any place could bend as much as 2 inches or more. This was because of the atmosphere at that time, which was similar to the atmosphere under water at great depths. The atmosphere will change again in the Dvapara Yuga and Kali Yuga, and the bones will harden. It will again change when the next Sat Yuga comes into power. The original bodies by the end of the Sat Yuga contained a high content of oil, whereas it is found that the flesh bodies have a high content of other kinds of liquids, and even the blood is different. This remains so through the Kali Yuga. Because of the high oil content in the original bodies, the bones are soft and springy, much like snake or fish bodies. All through the Treta Yuga, we were able to maintain these fibrous bodies with a high content of oil and keep them soft and pliable. In these soft, pliable bodies, we were easily in touch with beings on other planets. Monasteries of ancient Lemuria were surrounded by thick stone walls designed to protect the inhabitants from fierce winds. Each artisan would enter with his trainees through openings at the four corners, as there was little mixing of monastic clans. In early days, devas and mahadevas would manifest and receive petitions from the monastery at pagoda-like temples at auspicious times, offering guidance and direction from the inner worlds. These beings would manifest in 3 stages, becoming more and more visible as they hovered over the pagoda until they appeared on the pedestals. All would gather to absorb the darshan, receive direction, and be graced. Much of the communication in these days was through mental means, and there were many games and pastimes related to this art. Om. Could they have known the experiences they were about to have? The veiling grace of him who oversees all, sustains all, later to absorb when experiences birthed forth their knowledge, which, when used rightly in timing and amounts, became wisdom, keeps from them the future which was to be lived through to be known. They valued and involved cosmic rays which enhanced the process. Gurudeva. Chapter 3. The First Temples. In the Sat and Treta Yugas we lived and live mainly in our minds. During these yugas everyone came into the new earth body, functioning in the eye at the top of the head. We go deeply into the development of the inner bodies and do not come further out in the mind than the 4th chakra. It was during the Treta Yuga that the inner bodies of the celestial beings were so adjusted to the earth atmosphere that when each one acquired a flesh body, the eye and the forehead could faintly be seen in the ether penetrating through it. No distinction between the inner bodies and outer bodies was ever made, and each conversed freely one with another, through verbal and mental means, about their experiences at night while their fleshly bodies slept, and they soared on rays of light and sound to visit friends on other planets, as freely as they talked of occurrences within the immediate surroundings through the day. The more advanced ones could leave the body into light and sound and go to another yuga cycle. If they wanted to go into a 10th yuga cycle, they would go to another solar system where it was occurring. No distinction was made between the inner and outer. One thing was as real or unreal as another. It is just the total mind we are experiencing. The mind is so clear at this point in time. Assistance from our Mahadevas. Mahadevas from other planets often visited us on ours, and through mental means in their etheric bodies, through helpful conversations, guided and instructed the various avenues of our evolution. There was such a great number of these inner plane beings, and they did all sorts of things to help us. In this way, they would continue their own spiritual advancement without taking a body. These advanced souls were specialists in certain areas of the evolution of the elements of the celestial bodies inhabiting these original bodies, or fleshy ones, for each celestial body was of the elements of the planet upon which it originated. Easy living, traveling from Earth. There is no consciousness of time in the Sat Yuga, but our prophets say that by the end of the Kali Yuga, time will seem very important to the earthbound souls that still remain. We are advised that during the first part of the Sat Yuga, mankind will spend this time overcoming the reaction of the night of the Kali Yuga. The fear will leave and the memory of it. It will become increasingly easier for everyone to live on the planet. He will live underground and travel to other planets with the grace and ease that he, in his celestial body, has always been accustomed to. Many of the celestial souls that came and are coming to the planet were transported on the power of more advanced beings, and once here they will not be able to leave the planet until the next Sat Yuga. However, many of us can freely come and go. Many souls that just barely made it to Earth were not highly evolved, and once here lived in a consciousness similar to birds, living right on the vegetation they found on the planet. The need for ego armor. Man will have to protect his celestial body as well as physical body through the Kali Yuga by developing a shell around them both, except for a few who do not need this ego armor and will keep alive some semblance of our philosophy and too few strands of our culture. Toward the end of the Treta Yuga, this division began to occur, and some of us separated ourselves from the population, along with others with fleshy bodies, more sensitive to the harrowing feelings of change that were beginning to groom the external patterns of the population as we merged into the Dvapara Yuga. This group of us who will carry the power through in the monastic tradition, and many of us will be the same but in different external forms, are able to hold within our minds the rays of the central sun of this galaxy that are diminishing due to the configuration of the rearrangements of the galaxy. We and we alone will have the powers to initiate others into having the ability to disseminate through their celestial and physical bodies these penetrating, life-giving rays of the central sun. During the next Sat Yuga, a synthesis will occur for the first time of all three cycles of yugas that have preceded it. All that has occurred since celestial beings first began to inhabit the planet will blend together, as man will then be consciously conscious of the forces on the planet, the molding and weaving of gold. We cover the physical bodies and our original bodies with a shiny yellow substance that is a conductor of force, and in this way are more able to feel the rays of the central universal sun. The arts of weaving and working in stone are quite advanced. Our laboratories and technicians wove this gold and silver substance into fabrics and other kinds of decoration for these bodies. By the end of the Dvapara Yuga, man will use other materials to cover the body. We have oils that if put on, gold will permeate right through to the other side. While the oil is going through, we can mold the gold like clay. Gold worn on the body is also molded right to the muscle structure of the individual. In the same way, we have oils and medications to put on hard stone to soften and mold it with our hands. Some of our activities now are in writing great volumes of information as guidelines for our culture and the preservation of all of us on this planet, to establish patterns, systems, and formulas to be adhered to through the Dvapara Yuga. When the darkness comes, people will begin to lose their inner knowledge and awareness of the chakras and their function. Though we have the wheel as a tool at this time, it will be lost in the earth changes during the Dvapara Yuga. Blind to the inner wheel, mankind will also become blind to the wheel on the outside. Various patterns of evolution. The group of divine souls that came to Earth in the cycles of yugas before the one we are in now became some of the animal kingdom that the extraterrestrial souls who came in the Sat Yuga had to face. Some of us in this yuga came to rescue them, along with others who came to experience the same evolution as they have done. These gentle demonic souls did not encompass the experiences of having to devour one another to further their evolution. Many of them came from the great star, the sun of this solar system. The route most of us took to this planet was by first arriving on the sun and then continuing on to this planet. One of the great amazements to the devas in the fleshy bodies was the feeling of the heat of the sun and the inability of that body to cope with the rays of it. Why we came to Earth. The mother principle was not recognized on Earth until the race came into human reproducing bodies in the Treta Yuga. Souls in their perfect state were in cellular evolution. They were in a complete state, as complete as a cell, and evolved within their own strata of evolution. Some of the most highly evolved souls would grow another body within them and then divide themselves into two. These then would divide themselves and become four. They would just slide out from themselves, and one would energize the new one. Another soul would then inhabit the new body. In this way, soul bodies duplicate themselves in the third world. This occurred on the planet that we came from, and this is why we had reached a pinnacle of evolution and become as a flock of birds or school of fish, because we were so similar to our originators. It will be only through this cycle of yugas that we gain our own individuality and realization of the totality of the self. Then, when we are granted permission to leave this planet, with access to other planets in the universe, we will be the first there to divide our celestial body into two, then the two into four, and we will in that way spawn a new divinic group, through this method, who will later have to inhabit a fire planet to gain their evolution and attain their individuality. Those who realize the self fully are in three phases of evolution, depending upon the advancement of the soul's evolution when they arrived on the planet. The Shastras explain that some are still here today by personal choice, helping with the evolutionary process. Others of the second phase of evolution have since left this planet and are on other planets, and still others in the third group just became the self. A soul's evolution is long and vast. Therefore the animal kingdom, the human kingdom, the divinic kingdom are all seen through our wisdom as one and the same. The original intelligence is a cell, and many of those cells gathered together to make this celestial body, which in turn divides itself. Our Mahadevas have several sets of arms, as they are always dividing themselves. The devas that surround them and serve them are of them. Space, time, and mind are synonymous. Our Shastras say that in the depth of the inner mind, there is just a thin veil separating one planet from another, for space, time, and mind are synonymous. In the external mind, created because of the animal kingdom, this thin veil is seen as billions of miles of empty space. Therefore no one has ever really been separated, because in the inner mind the planets are not great distances apart. There is a yoga practice where one can go into the self and come out at any point of time that he chose in the future, faster than you could blink your eye, and be just as you were when you went in. And the Shastras say that, being that, you would then have realized the self at that point in time. One could decide to come back to Earth in the middle of the next yuga and go into samadhi, come out, and be there. These time cycles will have nothing to do with the concept of time at the end of the Kali Yuga. The middle of the next Sat Yuga, as well as the middle of the last Sat Yuga, exist right now, as well as this current point in time exists right now. Ceremonies to call the deities. During the ceremonies in our temples in the Treta Yuga, when bringing another celestial soul through to the fibrous body to begin the evolution on this planet, we would all come together and vibrate our inner body so that the outer one would become as transparent as possible, so the deity would come. The object was to get into the self. This is what everyone was striving for. The Mahadeva from their planet would assist us. Some of the most evolved would become so transparent that it would be almost impossible to see them with any of the three eyes. So great was the power generated by us. They would become like a shadow. This is when the ceremony started. Rays would emanate from the brain and other chakras, which would make the one from whom these rays were emanating a god himself for a period, as he sent out power from himself, releasing souls from animal bodies. A similar kind of gathering was held to release a great deva from the bondage of an animal herd. Occasionally, and this happened rarely, he was able to manifest a second, and upon very rare occasions even a third fibrous body, thus avoiding the reincarnation cycle. The Mahadevas came in full force to help this evolved deva create a second or third fibrous body. It was difficult, but they were very powerful and radiated all their force through him, and he was evolved enough to contain it so that this could be accomplished after the advent into the animal nerve system. They will again perform a similar function through the Kali Yuga and into its successor, in helping these same universal spirits out of the bondages of the consciousness of flesh into the attunement to the universal core. Mahadevas came to bless and instruct. There were many pagoda-shaped temples with a high raised platform in the center of them for the divine deity, the Mahadeva, to come and stand on while blessing and instructing people. We stood on all four sides looking up at the platform. Everyone in the temple attended these ceremonies, which occurred quite often. They were periodically timed, though the festival of entertaining a Mahadeva was very instructed. The Mahadeva guided it all along. Many Mahadevas would come one after another to listen to the petitions that would be presented to them. The monastics would read the petitions and messages from the villagers who had sent them in to be read to the inner plane beings who each did different things. As the Mahadeva heard something they could help with, they would just go and do it. The Mahadeva, upon leaving, would tell us when he was returning and what to have ready for him, or who to have there. We would obey. This was the Mahadeva's way of communicating with us, not our way of communicating with them because they were in charge. These Mahadevas were our friends that we knew and loved. We approached them as a 10-year-old child does his parents. They are so beautiful in their transparent bodies, so strong as their rays of light pierce out as darshan flows into our minds. These same Mahadevas led us to this planet, and we respect them, their will, their guidance, and obey. Some of them we divided off from on the planet they live on before we arrived here. However, we do not have any desire to attain to being a god, for since we have been on earth we have found that we are already totally complete and simply fill a space of service at a point in time, performing our duty. We are their helpers, and they help the planet and everyone on it. Our goal is to dissolve the physical elements and ascend, go back to the source of it all. Helping souls to leave the planet. During some of our ceremonies, the gods would take one of us evolved enough to leave this planet onto the platform with him and dissolve his elements so that he would not have to incarnate again and have access to other planets in our universe, having totally completed his evolution on the fire planet. Once he became established in his new abode, he too would begin to duplicate his body there into forms similar to it, and he would visit us occasionally on the platform to administrate petitions and bring us news of his new evolutionary experiences there. When a Mahadeva appeared on our platform, he pulled the 14 elements together, and in doing so created a temporary body. Upon leaving this body, it dissolved and floated down to the floor onto a small mound of sweet, airy substances, which we divided up among ourselves and took into our bodies. Everyone present left after eating it, filled with divine energy, for it contained radiations from the central sun. The eating of this gave us the strength to pursue our duties with vigor, and it often contained valuable information or messages for one of us. This message would only go to the one to whom it was intended inwardly to help in his craft, skill, or personal meditation. Our Lemurian monasteries were at their height when more than half of the population in each one dissolved their elements into the essence of pure being. Our Mahadevas were the divine beings from the Satyuga who, because of their power, did not go into the animal kingdom and remained still active on earth through the Sat and Treta Yugas, these many hundreds and thousands of years. Now, toward the end of the Treta Yuga, the most prominent of them are the ones who were the leaders of major groups of us to this planet then. And they tell us they will incarnate into flesh and bone bodies during the Kali Yuga to help the celestial souls at that time, as contact from another planet or the inner mind of this one will be almost totally impossible. It is hard for us to conceive that this light will not remain in the minds of all of us as the Dvapara Yuga begins, but our Mahadevas kept admonishing us to prepare and taught us how. They said that getting the physical body with the 3 lower chakras was our way to realizing the self. They told us they would help us adjust and learn how to use our physical bodies in order to anticipate events and coordinate our lives. Toward the end of the Dvapara Yuga, new magnetic forces will begin to develop so very strongly on the planet as the gravity on the Earth gets stronger and stronger, and nothing floats in the air anymore. These forces will be new to the people, and they will not quite understand them soon enough to protect themselves, and will become vulnerable to the magnetic pulls and begin to become confused, one of our Mahadevas carefully explained to us from the platform. We listen, but we do not understand all that we hear. Now the mental communication is excellent. All of us know everything that occurs. We have circular mental vision, and if some kind of out-of-the-ordinary experience happens to one of us, it happens to all of us. This is the way we evolve. Changes during the Treta Yuga. During this time, all of our body structures, along with the Earth atmosphere, are undergoing a rapid change. So in this Yuga, our basic challenge is to hold the vibration that existed through the Sat Yuga within a core group of us, so that the others could continue their peaceful existence without experiencing drastic changes. We, 1/3 of the entire population, live separately from all the others, as all but a few of us were the original fibrous bodies. The other 2/3 have now come up through the animal kingdom in this Yuga, and we don't want the race to keep getting back into it. That's why we are trying to hold the vibration. Different races are forming at this time, coming back through the animal kingdom. They mate as the animals do, on a cyclic pattern through the year. We lived behind great walls to protect these bodies from the imposing forces, and within these encasements performed our function. In this way we held the full impact of the vibration of the Sat Yuga through the entirety of the Treta Yuga. Carrying cosmic darshan. When the Mahadeva sent one of us on a pilgrimage away from our accustomed surroundings, we were commissioned to carry a ray that he brought from the central sun with us to a place that was obscured from these kinds of radiations because of the Dvapara Yuga vibration that was imposing itself upon us. When a pilgrimage of this kind is initiated, we are told of our exact destinations and method of travel. When on these kinds of pilgrimage, we draped our bodies in white and were recognized and cared for along the way, as this was the sign of the pilgrim. The Mahadeva himself from the inner world of our planet could easily distinguish one of us draped in white and assist us along the way. We carried the rays of the universal sun that he prismed. This was his way of giving power through us to the celestial beings in their various and varied kinds of earth bodies we met along the way. As one of the carriers of the darshan on a pilgrimage, we all were charged with the responsibility to begin the darshan streams that began to run like a river close to the ground. This helped our gods send their power through these channels. When our temples had festivals, the Mahadeva's power flowed through the established streamers, keeping all of us invigorated and stable on earth in our desire for self. About our monastery cloisters. Surrounding our pagoda-like temples are places where we live. These vast homes, in which we were alone and apart from the other 2/3 of the population of this planet, were monastic in nature and protocol. It was here that we set the pattern for the next million circles to come, the pattern of the gathering together in aloneness. The only company we keep is with those who live without the grosser bodies that we hold, live in, express through, and carry the rays given to us by our Mahadevas, who gathered them together from the central sun, limiting them to the velocity of our capability and usage. We have divided ourselves into many of these monasteries, situated adroitly at various important areas around the planet. Monasteries were always located where they were needed most, and always within walking distance from another monastery. The reason for this was that our large monastery would hold a vibration of darshan for the surrounding area, extending out for a radius of some 50 to 100 miles. The purpose of these Lemurian monasteries was to keep the total vibration of the deity and the religion alive and vibrant through the cells of the people who lived in the vicinity. The monastics living together in these monasteries, totally devoted to their sadhana and religious practices, held this strong darshan vibration of the deity steady, and it radiated out in a circle in a radius of 50 to 100 miles. The next monastery would be placed on the perimeter of the emanating darshan of the one nearest to it. In this way there was no break in continuity, and therefore they were always within the walking or flying distance of each other as they spread out across the land. The preceptors who guided groups of us here a yuga ago are our teachers, our prophets, our gurus, and they are responsible for many of us who gather apart from all others in these monastic groups. Piles of gold and silver, brought by the inhabitants of the surrounding communities to the Lemurian monasteries, served as destination markers for the Devas and Mahadevas, and these glowing substances were easily visible from the third world. Along some of the walls inside of the monastery were holes bored in which the Lemurians slept and left their physical bodies while traveling on inner planes of consciousness at night. At these times they gathered before their guru to receive instruction in inner knowledge. During the day they disseminated the revelations to family men by speaking through other holes in the wall. The senior minority group was calculated by the youngest among them, all known as the Vadivel, by studying the wooden sticks on which monastics kept track of their seniority age. Om. Deity and Master Guru were synonymous during this period. After all, the gurus were the chosen channels of the gods. He who was, is, and ever will be all-pervasive lived within each soul, ever present and alive. All knew this as fact, but the soul encased within its many bodies needed maturity, evolving more and more into his likeness. Satgurus directed with infinite patience and accuracy. Guru Deva.